Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I am Violette Ayala, I'm the founder of FemCity, and you're joining us today for a very special July series. We are talking about closing chapters and making space for new ones. It's a three-part series that we hosted today on Thursday, July 7th. The first part was about forgiveness, moving forward, releasing the things that are holding back. In this segment, we're going to talk about how to close those chapters, how to wrap it up nice and neat so that we can make space for new ones. And then after this one, we have another series that matches it well as two. I have three of our FemCity experts joining me today. They are our frequent panelists, teachers, coaches, writers, and contributors. And I know it's going to be an amazing conversation. I know these three women very well. They have excellent energy, so I know the conversation is going to be just on point. If you're watching us live, which I see already, we have a couple of femmes watching, feel free to ask questions. Just remember it's a safe space for us to go ahead and work together. We collectively want you to do really well in life. We want you to make lots of money and be very happy. So that is our energy for you today and always. And if you're watching the replay, because we're going to repurpose this and post it all over the place, if you're watching the replay, don't feel like you missed the conversation. You can always reach out to any of us at any time. You can tag us, DM us. We are cheering you on. So just make sure that you know that we want your success. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce our panel. Alyssa. So what I love about Alyssa's energy is that she helps women realize their true selves, how to work toward getting rid of all this yucky stuff that's holding them back. But her energy is just so light and joyous all the time. She just always brings that energy to us. I love that about you, Alyssa. Do you want to share a little bit more about what you do?
Sure. So my name is Alyssa Williamson, and I'm a mindset and intuitive success coach, specifically for business owners, and even more specifically for female entrepreneurs and professionals, because it's both your mindset and the energy you show up with the world that creates the life you're living. And so this is a perfect topic for that as well. So I'm super excited today.
Awesome, lovely. And let's go to Lauren. So what I love most about Lauren, I had the opportunity to sit next to Lauren at the FemCity Philadelphia lunch last December. I can't believe it was last December, right? Yeah, it was last December. Oh my gosh, see her energy right now? It's like tenfold in person. She's just one of the most loveliest people I've ever met. Always has great ideas, by the way. Sometimes we have really good programs in the global program inspired by her. She's always got great ideas on how we can work together in different ways. So I love that about you, Lauren. Anything you want to share about your business, what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, Violet. And it's such a pleasure to be with these lovely women today. I am Lauren Weinberg. I am founder of Lasting Change Wellness, and I help aspiring women push through the doubts, the fears, the stress, all the nonsense that holds you back and keeps you playing small, so you can step into being the star of your life, fall deeply in love with yourself, and create a life that you love to live. And I love that we are having this conversation today, because I happen to have a program specifically for women who are closing the chapter on a marriage. And I'll share how to get in touch with me about that at the end of our segment.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Lauren. And Michelle Butt. Michelle, I miss our hugs. I hope to make it up to Toronto at the end of this year. Michelle's just amazing with energy as well. She's a facial recognition intelligence expert. So she is generally teaching in that realm for FemCity, which I love. I always learn so much from you, Michelle. Anything you want to add?
No, thank you for having me here today. And so, as Violet said, I'm Michelle Butt, and I help people understand what their face is telling them about who they are and what they're here to do.
Love it. All right, let's dive in. Okay, if you are familiar with FemCity, you know we love action steps. We can talk about motivation, inspiration, but at the end of the day, we need action steps. We need ways to move forward. I'm an action person, so I know all of our femmes, for the most part, we're all action people as well. So that is going to be my first question today. So when it comes to closing chapters, what we mean by closing chapters is, you know, we talked about forgiveness earlier this morning. Forgiving ourselves for financial situations we put ourselves through, business scenarios that we got ourselves into, personal relationships that maybe didn't work out the best. So all of that stuff that perhaps is lingering in our energies is holding us back. So we talked about that forgiveness. I don't want to spend too much time there because we already talked about it earlier today. Now we're going to talk about closing chapters. How do you wrap that up in a neat little bow, if you can, and move on? Because there's a whole beautiful world of opportunities and abundance that are waiting for all of us. We can up level all the time into a newer and brighter world. So that is going to be my first question for our panelists. Alyssa, what is your number one tip for those women that are looking at closing chapters and making that space for new ones to open?
So true. And so the number one tip that I have, and then I'll explain it, is to be pulled forward by your future. So what's the new thing you're looking forward to? What's the new goal? So when I coach my clients, the first thing I do is I'm like, you have to have clarity on what you're moving forwards. Your past doesn't need to determine who you are, what you do. So that's where forgiveness is great, just releasing that energy. But really, it's your future that drives who you are and how you're going to behave. So when you have this vision for yourself, it changes how you act in the present moment. You're trying to step into that future already. And so if you can even imagine who your future self is and how you can step into that moment, and it's let your future pull you forward. It's no longer, you're not controlled by your past. You're creating this new chapter, and so stop dwelling on it, which is very hard sometimes depending on what it is. But get pulled by excitement. So find something that inspires you, something that you connect to emotionally. So when I say be pulled forward by your future, breaking that down even more is I recommend having affirmations written on little index cards that I make it like a story. So I paint a picture on one side of an index card. What does this look like? Whether it's love or finances or business or friendship, like just paint that picture. And then when you're reading it daily, imagine it in all of your senses. So this is a piece of NLP, is imagining everything through all of your senses: taste, scent, touch, smell, hearing, feel, and really become that. It's like Olympic athletes. They practice in their mind just as much as they practice physically. So when you imagine it in your mind, it's a piece of manifesting. You're connected to it vibrationally, and then you can bring it to you. So really find the excitement in the new, and let that be the thing that you focus on as one chapter ends and you get into the next.
I love that. So I'm taking notes. I know you guys know I take notes all the time. I love that. Not only that you shared your future, like think about the future and have it pull you there, but I also love, I'm just highlighting what you shared again, because I think humans need to hear it a couple times. So connect all of your senses to the emotion, act like your future self, which I think is really great. I know sometimes people are like, I'm going to act like I'm a millionaire. That's not what she's talking about. Like, you don't want to act like a millionaire and spend, over $1 million. You want to act already in the persona of who you want to be in the future. And then practice in your mind. I love that you said that, because I knew that athletes practiced in their minds, but I didn't realize that they practiced winning in their minds as much as they physically practice their skills and their talent and their strength. So I'm totally going to share that with my daughter. She's getting ready to compete. I love that, because imagine how much time that would be. Instead of watching the news, instead of listening to something that's sad and depressing, imagine if you use that energy instead to focus on your future self and already envisioned yourself in that financial state that you want to be in, feeling it all over the place. Oh, that is so incredibly powerful. Thank you so much. Let's go to Lauren. Lauren, what is your number one tip for those that want to close chapters to make space for new ones?
So the number one thing that I always remind people of is that we're always in the process of becoming. I call myself the becoming coach, because we are always, whether it's energetically, internally, or in our lives, we're always evolving. And therefore, it does bring in just knowing that in any moment you're doing the best you can. So bringing in that forgiveness that you mentioned, and just loving yourself for doing the best that you could in that moment. And even if that moment wasn't great, it's okay. That's the best you could do in that very moment. And I heard Serena Williams mention this, because she got knocked out in the first round of Wimbledon, right? And she said, in this moment today, I gave it everything I could. Maybe yesterday, maybe tomorrow I could do better, but that's all I could do in this moment. So just love yourself for the best that you could do, and know that there's always another moment behind it, and the next one can be different. And I love what Alyssa said. I agree with everything she said, but just a couple of tips on actually closing up that chapter. Like you said, tying it up with a bow. And to me, it starts with, how are you thinking about it? And again, are you simply like closing a door? Are you simply leaving a chapter? Or are you leaving something so that you have the energy to move forward to the rest of your life? So that's to start with that, right? And it does help to shift the lens. But as you leave something, it's kind of a two-part process. The first part is, what are you grateful for? There's always something to be grateful for. It might have been the learning that you had about yourself, what your strengths are, or even maybe where you have opportunity to do better. But what's the learning? Maybe it's an actual learning about something important, like practical steps, something you learned about running a business, or something you learned about being in relationships that you can take with you. So what are you saying thank you for in that relationship? Really spend time here looking for what those positives are. And then on the other side, what are you saying thanks but no thanks to? What did you learn about yourself that maybe you can let go? You can let that be a part of your past and not take it with you. Or what did you learn about what you don't want in a situation? Maybe there are certain things that you wouldn't repeat moving forward with a business. Or maybe there are certain aspects of what you want, don't want in a relationship that you're going to leave, and know that if you see that popping up again in the future, that's something to say no thanks to, because we do tend to repeat ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Our lives are learning laboratories, and everything we go through in our life is to teach us what we need to move forward. So everything's a gift. I always say you win or you learn. There is no lose.
Yeah.
And even if you fail, you're not a failure. Even if you lost something, you're not a loser. It's an opportunity. So I'm not going to say too much about how to move forward. I think Alyssa did a really great job with that, but I'll let it stand with, how do you close that chapter for yourself?
And I took notes. I love, first of all, I got chills when you said the process of becoming. I love that, because we talked about that earlier in the forgiveness class, is that we think that, well, I fixed myself, so I'm okay. And then like 2 days later, something else will happen, or another challenge will happen, or you'll recognize another, quote unquote, I agree with you, there are no failures. But I love that you said process of becoming. And I love that you also mentioned leaving that energy behind so you can make space for new energy to come in. I thought that was really profound. And I wrote down the quote, and I can't remember who said this quote. I did the best I could with what I had at that time. I don't know if that's a Maya Angelou. I don't know. I'm probably just butchered also the words. She was definitely more poetic than that. But I go back to that sometimes too. I did the best I could. Like when I go back, like, oh my gosh, that 18-year-old self of mine, or that 21-year-old self of mine, I can't believe it. I did the best I could with what I had at that moment. Maybe it was better the next day. Maybe it was better the day before. But at that moment, I did the best I could with what I had. So I love that insight. So beautiful. I knew this was going to be a great conversation. Michelle, what is your number one tip for those that are looking at closing chapters and making the space for new opportunities?
Well, I love what all of the other ladies have said, and I'm just going to go in a slightly different direction, because in facial intelligence, one of the things that we talk about really is the seasonality of life, and that we are in seasons. And so sometimes when we think about closing chapters, it feels very finite. But if you think of your life as a series of seasons that have this natural flow and that are constant and consistent, winter never goes to summer. There's always spring, even if it feels really short. And so that in our own process of living, when we go through something, that whatever it is that we're going through the seasons of that. And so when we're coming to what feels like the winter of something, then the best thing to do is to recognize that that is a season that's going to come to an end, and then prepare for spring. So very much like the other ladies have been saying, but putting it in this concept that really can make it visual for us to know, okay, closing a door doesn't necessarily mean, oh, that's all in the past. It just means that winter has gone, and that was winter of 2021, and now we're moving into spring of 2022. And so that there is this consistent flow to things, and we can't get stuck in winter forever. We're not in like Game of Thrones or something like that, so that if we strive for what's going to happen in the next season, or know that the next season is coming, then we can sit and reflect and move forward, or look forward to changes, or put plans in place. All of those things that come with, oh, what are we going to do when spring comes? What are we going to do when summer comes? So understanding what season you're in and what season that experience was in, so you know what to prepare for next. That would be my advice.
Yeah, and that's powerful. Yeah, and I wrote down series of seasons, and also the consistent flow of things. Like, I love that. I was listening to you share, and I was thinking, like, we have the same thing when it's like December 31st. And I don't know why this is the case, but December 31st, we look at that year as a whole other season, and then we start preparing for the next year. And I wonder why we only do that. I mean, societal wise, why do we only do that once a year? Why aren't we doing that quarterly? Like, I know during the summer, I prepare for the fall, whether it's cleaning my closets, or I don't know, I go into this like nesting phase. And also during the holidays, I'm already preparing for, but I would love for it to be habitual or kind of normalized, that we edit and review things on a quarterly basis to intentionally remove those things, whether it's stories or relationships or narratives, physical things, and then make space for that next season. I love that tip. So I don't know. I think we should start it. I think we should all start doing that.
Absolutely.
And report back and see how it goes. I'm sure there's going to be huge differences with that. I love that so much. All right. So we had some love that came through. This comes from Alyssa, who is our co-lead at FemCity Sarasota. I love Melissa. We are not defined by who we are in life, especially during difficult times, but we live and learn on this journey in growing and blossoming into the best of who we are becoming. That's such a beautiful, I got chills. That's like a recap of all three of you, what you've shared. I love that, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, we're wrapping up. Final advice, Alyssa, that you have for our femmes?
I think all of this has been great today, and it's all these pieces together. So really it comes down to life is a journey, and just enjoy the journey. And that can be really difficult in the difficult times, but it's a season. Your journey is becoming who you're going to be. So enjoying that process, and you can give your past meaning. So sometimes it takes time to get removed from it, but you can look back at it and see it as a learning or a winning experience, rather than just, oh, I was such a failure that day type thing. And so it's wrapping all of those pieces together and creating this process that works for you. It's really, that's what it comes down to. Is I tell my clients, listen to your intuition. These are the best practices. Here's what we know from energy and neuroscience. What works for you, and do what works for you.
Yeah, beautiful. Love that. All right, let's go to Lauren. Lauren, your final tip?
Yeah, my final tip is to learn from the past, but don't live in the past. Much like Michelle said, I love this idea of seasonality. That was a beautiful metaphor. But you have control over how you show up in any given moment. That's completely in your control. So you decide where to look. Look back to learn, but you have the choice to look forward and decide what's coming next. So how do you want to live? With intention.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, so good. I actually don't want this conversation to end. Let's go to Michelle. Michelle, what is your final tip?
My final tip is that whenever you're closing or ending something, that there are really two steps that will move you energetically into the next. One is the refinement process. So looking at what worked, what didn't, all of the things, to then give you the picture of what the new ideal will be, so that you know what you're moving into, similar to what Alyssa said in the beginning, but also then to pause and rest and give yourself grace before you start the next thing. Because especially here in North America, we tend to finish something, move on to the next thing right away. And there's this very sacred sage space in Chinese medicine and in facial intelligence that is the resting phase that starts the creative spark for the next new endeavor. And if we skip that, then we can get lost and have, endless winter, and that isn't what we want. So that would be my advice.
Violet, can I just piggyback on that for
Sure.
1 second? Because I realized I did forget to mention something important, and Michelle just reminded me. give yourself that time in that pause that Michelle mentioned to allow whatever feelings come up. There are no wrong feelings about what happened. They're your feelings. When you're leaving something, if you need to grieve, grieve.
Yeah.
If you need to, just sit and forgive, then just sit and forgive. But whatever you are feeling, what you need to experience, let that come up. Otherwise, that's part of what keeps you stuck in the past, is not allowing those feelings to process. So let them bubble up and experience them.
I love that. I've been working with women only for 13, 14 years with FemCity. And then before I owned a Pilates studio and only worked with women also for 10. So I think I've been in this space for a while. And I know from the students that I've had, the ones that are always feeling like they're on this hamster wheel, that things are not changing, that things are always in this circular pattern of like doom and stress. And I feel like the missing component is that pause. And that word surrender, like when, people, oh, I'm surrendered. But the reality is, like, when you surrender, you pause and you allow the chips to fall and you feel it. I think that is the most beautiful. And some will say at the bottom, like when you hit the bottom, there is a brightness that happens when you hit the bottom, because you've lost, in essence, in your mind, everything. But then you can craft and curate your life from that point. So just beautiful. And we did have some love that came through. I just want to recognize we have from FemCity Brownsville. Thank you so much, Dory, for some love. And then Lori is also from South Texas. Thank you so much, Lori, for your love. All right. So Alyssa, how can Fems find you to learn more about the work you're doing in this world?
The best way to find me is either alyssawilliamson.com, and I have a free guide on my website, or on Instagram, liveyourlife_adventure. And just to tie back in, feminine energy is about pausing and taking space. So you step into your goddess energy when you do that and allow yourself to have that time. So it's even more empowering than just taking space.
Yes, I love it. And we had some more love that came through. I reminded myself this past weekend to let emotions go through me. So much love. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for that. Let's go to Lauren. Lauren, how can Fems find you to learn more about the work you're doing in this world?
Yeah, the easiest way is lastingchangewellness.com, or right here on Instagram at Lasting Change Coach. And you can find out about that. It's called Your Fab Divorce. If you're interested in that program, closing that chapter, I'd love to help you out with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. And Michelle, how can Fems find you?
The best way, I think, to find me is on Instagram. I'm at face value with no E on the value, and I read faces there and share insights about what faces are telling you. So
love it. And we'll post this on Instagram. We'll go ahead and tag them to make it really easy for you. If you're watching on the Facebook fan page, maybe the panelists can go over and just add a comment, so it makes it really easy for them to find you. And we'll be back in about 30 minutes for the next class. Thank you so much. And you can head over and watch the replay at FemCity.com and any of our public platforms. We can't wait to hear your successes with all these tips and action steps that have been shared from our global team. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.